The Residence is a new whodunit murder mystery series on Netflix produced by Shonda Rhimes, and anything including Shonda Rhimes, I'm indulging in. Known as the best to ever do it, Cordelia Cupp, a sarcastic, witty, quirky detective, arrives at the White House to solve the murder of Chief Usher A.B. Wynter, which has occurred during a state dinner. This show has a really great cast. We have Uzo Aduba, she plays Cordelia Cupp. Giancarlo Esposito plays A.B. Wynter, the Chief Usher of the White House. I love him as an actor. When I saw he was the one that died, I was a little sad, but they provided a lot of flashbacks and it literally felt like I got to see him pretty much every episode. Susan Kelechi from This Is Us, Jason Lee, Isaiah Whitlock, JD Hall. I mean, this cast is stacked. And who caught my girl Lane from Gilmore Girls? If you caught that, comment below. So this has the classic whodunit style. During this state dinner, A.B. Wynter is killed and no one knows how or why it happened. Essentially, everyone becomes a suspect because everyone had some type of issue with him. A few episodes are dedicated to focusing on specific suspects. They take some time to focus on who Carlo was as a person and a little of his backstory. What I like about this is by providing the comedy aspect, it isn't too heavy. They do a great job at marrying the drama aspect with the comedic aspect. Cordelia Cupp was so well written. She was the perfect lead for this role, and she brought a true comedic tone to her character, with her being super direct and sarcastic. There were moments where she could just stare at someone and all of a sudden they would just spill all of this information, which kind of reminded me a little of Miranda Bailey from Grey's Anatomy. She would stare you down until you got on board, but Cordelia stares you down until you give her information. So you can clearly see Shonda Rhimes weaved throughout the series, and I can tell she played a major part in shaping Cordelia's role and a lot of the dialogue and character building because she does that so well. Harry Hallinger, who was like the president's right hand, he also provided a lot of the comedic relief and tone. He was very in your face and he just always seemed very suspicious. I really liked the use of flashbacks and flash forwards between the night of the murder and the congressional hearing and other events. I also thought the dialogue used to connect the different tenses was really brilliant. For example, they would flash forward to the hearing. During the hearing, Senator Filkins, the chairman, would ask a question and Cupp would answer through her dialogue in a flashback. That was so cool. The dialogue in this is snarky, it's snappy, it's quick and witty, and all the characters were able to adapt to that really well. And we have to talk more about Cordelia's arc. The reason she was so brilliant was she would connect her love for birding to cases she would work on. In one of the episodes, it was questioned why she carried around a birding book with no birds in it. And it was answered that when she was out in the field birding, she would always keep a journal. It was the way she processed information and the way she investigated. And she mirrored this exact thing on her cases, and I thought it was really clever connecting birding to the current murder mystery. Through this series, she was always so careful about calling people in question suspects until she had hard evidence. So she would have a list of people who she found quote unquote interesting, but she refused to call them suspects, and I love that little aspect. Her unique detective methods were often commented on, but she did things on her time and only made a move when she was ready. So this series starts off the night of the state dinner. Among the suspects are the White House staff members, cooks, designers, members of the first family, and once Cupp arrives, she requests that all 200 plus people that were invited stay so they could investigate further. They provided her with Edwin Park, who was like her right hand, played by Randall Park, and also Susan Kelechi Watson's character Jasmine Haney, who was the one who took his place when he died, was able to provide a lot of insight to help the investigation since she worked so closely with him, which ends up being presented as her motive. They figured she wanted the position so bad, she killed him. As Cupp delves into the case, new motives and suspects emerge, and the show does a great job at building suspense in certain moments. In any story, things need to be set up, but I have to say, the pacing was pretty uneven. There would be streams of action, and then it would completely plateau. It didn't start to pick up until episode 3, and it was a little tough getting through some of those episodes. Once I got to 7, I thought that was really suspenseful and exciting. And then the finale, well done, but it dragged a little bit. I think this could have easily been 6 episodes instead of 8. In one of the episodes, we got the opportunity to see some of her personal life when she was birding with her nephew. Through the same moment, we were able to see she had a strained relationship with her sister, and from here, there's a flashback of her telling her nephew about the start of her being a detective and where the love for investigating came from. She tells a quick story about her sister losing one of her favorite strawberry socks and how she used clues and found them. And she made it clear that's the way she loved her sister. And this leads me to believe the conflict between her and her sister maybe comes from one or both of them showing their love for each other in a way the other can't receive well. This scene ends with her nephew saying, "It looks like this day may end with us never finding the bird." And Cup says it will not end that way. And this was definitely foreshadowing for the murder mystery at the White House. If while you were watching you thought this feels like an Agatha Christie book, Agatha was actually referenced a couple times in this series. The first was during a scene with the housekeeper and her daughter. Her daughter was reading an Agatha Christie book called The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And she told her mom she's still reading, but she thinks she knows who did it, which is foreshadowing for her mom, who is about to look very guilty in this case. The second reference calls back to Murder on the Orient Express. And as Edwin Park is explaining this, he says it turns out they all did it. They were all a part of it in some way. And that's exactly what happened here. There was one person who, of course, took the fatal shot, but everyone contributed to killing him slowly over time. It was bizarre because people had no respect for A.B. Wynter. He wasn't valued after working there for so many years, and although he was pretty emotionless, he cared for everyone who worked there. It wasn't A.B. Wynter's style to express his appreciation. He was very much just about the work and moving on to the next thing. And one of the themes here that I noticed reminds me of the show Paradise that I covered. Everyone's mad at him and blames him because he's at the forefront, but there are people above him pulling the puppet strings and making him do the work. So it's another one of those situations where he's just a scapegoat and he's catching all of the heat. There comes a point in the investigation where she doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, and she gets a call from a mysterious person to meet her across the street. Once she arrives, it ends up being a little boy, very smart, very cute, who has been watching the White House with his binoculars. And he gives Cup a lead of a flashing red light he saw, which ends up being from the president's brother, Trip Morgan's watch. She thanked him for his hard work and promised him a tour of the White House, and this made sense in the moment. However, this didn't make too much sense at the end when they never showed him visiting the White House. So that was a hole that I didn't like. What's so interesting about these interviews of the suspects is everyone's explaining the same night in a totally different way. Everyone has different stories, so it's just interesting how people perceive things. Cup came to solve a murder and find motives, but discovered so much more. All of these conversations with the suspects led to more themes to this story. The hierarchy and power struggles, the structural conflicts, the us against them. There was a flashback to Christmas when A.B. Winters organized the setup of the gingerbread house, which was done annually. A newer employee, Lily, basically told him it was outdated and got rid of it, which is such a relatable thing, that struggle between what should be updated to keep up with the times versus what's tradition and familiar. I love the bond between Cup and her boss, Chief Dokes. It was a point where his job was in jeopardy, and he knew that if he continued to push, he would lose everything, and he stuck by her side and said, "Let's fight." But being the good friend that she is, she told him to just call it. So she protected him like he protected her, and they have such a great bond. So at this point, the investigation closed and ruled as a suicide. She's of course brought back a little later on to finish the job, but the way he stood behind her really warmed my heart. We come to a close with the congressional committee with the senator and Bix, and Cup says she found out who did it. And they're like, "Who?" And she's like, "Don't you want to know how I found out?" So the final episode is just showing how she put the final pieces together to solve the mystery. Before gathering all the suspects in one room, Cup gave Park an analogy to watch for called the blink, because that's when everything becomes clear and you know who did it. So it comes down to Elise and Bruce, the engineer and the housekeeper who fell in love, and all signs pointed to one or the other. It's mighty funny though that they're so in love, but they both blamed each other for the murder. All signs lead to them until Lily decides to over-explain herself right into implicating herself. And as soon as she does this, I love how Park jumps in and tells Cup, "There's the blink." So yeah, it ends up being Lily who killed A.B. Winters. But Winters left behind some coding that showed financial discrepancies on Lily's end, and it was revealed she sealed the wall where the murder weapon was, which was the clock. And although they explained her motive, basically power-driven, I still felt it was a little weak compared to some of the others' motives. Overall, aside from pacing and a few small holes, I enjoyed the series. I thought the cast was amazing. It was filled with a lot of my favorites. The dialogue was witty and funny, and it was very suspenseful. So I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5. And really quickly, let's look at some upcoming roles for Uzo. Looks like she's going to be in a film called Roof Man, and it's an upcoming American crime drama film. Ooh, this has a great cast too. Channing Tatum, Kristen Dunst, Uzo Aduba, Lakeith Stanfield. Oh, I am going to be tuned into that. If you made it to the end of the video, put a magnifying glass in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this new series. My name is Kamara. Thank you for watching another episode of Screen Diaries. Until next time, bye.